So I have to talk to you about what's happened in California. It became the first state in the nation to do a state-funded basic income program, and it was unanimous. I feel like you specifically have to have a lot of feelings about this, given that you ran Stockton's pilot program. How do you feel?
I feel so incredibly proud, and I feel great, particularly for the folks who are going to benefit
Yeah.
from the money. Like I think that for some people it's conceptual, but for far too many people, it's actually the difference between being able to pay rent when these eviction moratoriums expire or not, or the ability to pay food, or the ability to shelter in place and to pay for childcare as we see this Delta variant rise. So I'm very happy and thankful, but also proud because, as you mentioned, 4 years ago, when we announced in Stockton we were going to do this, everyone thought we were crazy. People would say this will never happen in America. There's no way. And now we have the state of California with both Republicans and Democrats. Not a single, like that's what did me. I said, not one vote no, not a single vote no. On the same day that we got the federal child tax credit, which is a guaranteed income to families with children. And it just reminded me that I mean, going first isn't easy, but it's so necessary because it provides the courage and the cover for everyone else. And you have sort of 58 mayors that are now part of Mayors for Guaranteed Income. You literally have the most popular part of the Biden administration thus far has been this child tax credit, which is money guaranteed to families. It's just, I'm just so happy. And it feels like all the work was worth it.
The energy behind it, right? The energy behind UBI as a whole. How much of it do you think is due to the pandemic and the child tax credit and the stimulus checks, all of that?
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of factors, but the pandemic, I know, gave the political leaders the courage to do it. And I say that because Marriage for Guaranteed Income was founded last June during the pandemic and during the Black Lives Matter protests. And that's because I saw a lot of my mayor friends were beginning to use cash for the first time and giving people one-time payments. And that's okay. And then they were seeing how people were devastated. They were like beginning to notice that, oh no, we should probably give people like cash on a monthly and ongoing basis. And so I think that's been super helpful. And I appreciate the question because I think oftentimes people act like things just happen. That one day the state of California woke up and decided to do a guaranteed income program, and one day 58 mayors woke up. No, it took a lot of work for myself, for my team, for my partners, who for the last 4 years have been taking every phone call, meeting in every meeting, having every Twitter argument, writing every op-ed, doing everything we could to like raise sort of consciousness. But the pandemic really made it clear that there was no longer an excuse because people were working and still couldn't pay for necessities to live. And people weren't allowed to work. People were told to stay home. People were told to shelter in place. People were getting sick and couldn't go to work. And I think it caused everyone to reckon with the fact that our economy wasn't working and that it has to come, we have to come emerge from this stronger and better. And sort of the stimulus checks, you had Mitt Romney calling for a child tax credit. Like all these people, I think, began to realize that no, this is serious. It's no longer a political thing. It's about survival, and our people deserve to survive.
Yeah, and it crosses party lines, right? Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney have people in their jurisdictions that need the money as much as Nancy Pelosi does.
And that's what gets it for me. It's like if you look at sort of even nationally, or even in the state of California, the cities with oftentimes the highest concentrated rates of poverty and economic insecurity are also the most conservative. So this is really a bipartisan issue of economic security, and we could solve it. And I think for me, it's exciting because it shows that we can actually do some things, at least in California, with both sides agreeing.
The vote, like you said, came the same day as the child tax credit, that as soon as that started going into the banks of tons of Americans. Do you feel like the child tax credit really is a study in basic income in itself for the federal government? And what do you think it could possibly teach Congress and lawmakers about policy? But also, what do you think Americans that are receiving this money are going to learn?
Look, this child tax credit, everyone sleep. This is the biggest deal. I'm like, why is everyone not Well, you see the parents on TikTok, the folks getting the money, they get it. They're on TikTok having me dying. But no, it's essentially a federal guaranteed income program. It's a guaranteed income for families with children. That is huge. Last year, there was nothing. This year, 90% of families with children receive guaranteed monthly payments from the government. It's a huge first step. And to all my friends who are universal basic income proponents, this is a huge first step to getting there. Like, this is such a big deal. And I think what we'll learn is that we can trust people with money. We'll learn that parents want to parent, that maybe some of the issues we have with parents going to back to school night sometimes, or with some parents not showing up the way we want them to show up, maybe it's triggered by economic insecurity and having to work themselves to death and being stressed and anxious and having all the mental health implications that come with that. Right. And I think it also show us that this is a way to make our country stronger, more united, more, and it has to be made permanent. And I it's going to be very hard after 6 months when folks are used to this little $300, $200 to take it away and also for no reason, because the reason won't be we can't afford it. It's like, oh, we don't want to do this anymore. Particularly with this Delta variant going crazy, we're still going to be in a pandemic, right? So it's like, so my hope is that becomes a permanent part of our social safety net, just like Social Security, just like Medicare, where it's a political death wish to try to touch it. Like, you better not touch it. Like, touch it if you want to. So I just think it'll do so much for families, for parents, and most importantly for children to grow up in households where at least the basics are met, right? At least they know they're going to eat, they're going to be housing secure, that they're going to have parents who are able to take time into parent. I am through the moon, and I hope we all learn that we should. I hope the question is, why did we do this sooner? Like, what took so long?
You know, most financial assistance programs from the government over the years, they have restrictions, right? Like for food, for housing. But why do you think it's important that these basic income programs don't have restrictions on how they're spent?
It's about trust, right? It's about trust. It's about dignity. It's about agency. And it's about understanding that finances are so volatile, and month to month, different needs become priorities. And no government official is smart enough to think of all the ways all the people need to spend money. And I learned that firsthand when we were designing the pilot in Stockton. Because in our listening session, literally everyone I talked to had a different reason how they would spend the $500, and they all made sense. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. One lady talked about she would get her transmission fixed so she could go to work. Is there a government program that gives money for you to fix your car? Mayor Schaaf talks about how one gentleman in her community talked about how he wasn't working because he couldn't wash his clothes because his washer and dryer was broken, and going to the laundromat was just too logistically challenging. Like, it just was like. So she said, there's no program for me to give people money to fix their washer and dryer, but that's a huge, that little thing allows him to wash his uniform and go to work. Like, and countless stories like that. So I think that's what a guaranteed income represents. And it doesn't mean that people don't need housing vouchers, that people don't need food vouchers, but it does mean that if you're struggling with housing and you're struggling with food, you're probably struggling with other things too. There's probably like a lot of other unmet needs. So why not give people the flexibility and the freedom to address their needs?
You know, you said this last time, and I thought you said it brilliantly. You said, I asked you about the bootstraps analogy that everyone always wants to quote, like, well, you know, people need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And you said, your boots might not have straps, is what you said. And, you know, honestly, talking to you, hearing about your research, it's also opened my mind about all the things I didn't think of, because it's true. It doesn't take just food and water and housing to live, right? And like, if you want people to pull themselves up out of that, to be able to do better on their own, then they need a boost. They need a little bit more.
And that's the thing. And I learned so much just from doing this work in Stockton. It's that people don't want to be in a position where they need help. People don't want to be in a position where a pilot program determines whether they go to work. Like, people hate to be in that position. And it's that hatred that allows them to take the little opportunity and really leverage it and multiply it and pay it forward. But I have not met a single person that is content to just have everyone else do things for them. Like people, like the vast
Right.
majority of people don't like that. They want to contribute. They want to be helpful. They want to volunteer. They want
Yeah.
like in Stockton, I would get a little bit annoyed because people would take the guaranteed income money and start giving it to other people
Yeah.
or start helping other folks. I'm like, put your own mask on first, right?
Yeah.
But they were like, no, I can't. I have to help. I'm in community with people. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing. It's really about sort of how do we unlock and unleash the potential of all of us and see how much better we are as a society for it. And I think we're evolving as a community and a society to realize like, oh, poverty is actually barbaric. It's actually so antiquated. It's actually not necessary. Like we're not saying everyone needs a yacht, everyone doesn't need a jet to go to space, but everyone needs the basics. Like why I get bothered when I actually see people living below the basics. Like that does something to me. Like we don't need to have because it's not inevitable. Like we literally don't have to have that, and that's what bothers me. It's like it's not inevitable. It's actually a choice, and it's with just a shift in paradigm can actually create something even better.